Welcome to the Future of Ground Transportation podcast, where we discuss the exciting innovations that lie ahead for organizational ground transportation. Each episode, we cover topics tailored to those resolving transportation-related challenges and provide tips, tools, and trends that will inspire you to stay ahead of the curve. And now, here's your host, Daniel Perez.
Welcome to the Future of Ground Transportation podcast. Tonight, we have a special guest, good friend of mine, Anthony Tivnan. Anthony, welcome to the show.
Daniel, thank you for having me. Good to be here. Always love hanging out with you.
Thank you. So, again, let's provide a little bit of context for tonight, listeners. If you want to give a little bit of your background, Anthony, who you are, what's your experience like?
Sure. So Anthony Tivnan, founder and president of Magellan Jets. Magellan Jets is a full-service, asset-light aviation platform, we call it. We offer a few different services in private aviation, on-demand charter, which is kind of trip by trip. Dan wants to go from Boston down to Miami, one way or just on a weekend, and not sign up for anything, just pay for that actual trip. That's on-demand charter. About 65-70% of our revenues come from block purchasing, 25 hours, 50 hours, 150 hours. We purchase on either a category of airplane, light, mid, super mid, heavy, or a jet specific, which we offer the Phenom 300, most popular light jet out there, the Challenger 300, 350, and the Gulfstream 400, 450. Earlier this year, we launched our aircraft sales and management solution, and where any clients that kind of evolve, and that's what we saw is this evolution of on-demand charter, and then they want something a little bit more simple, more consistent. They go onto a jet card, maybe needs change, usage change, and they go on to actually acquiring the asset, being the airplane. So we go down that process with them. And then what we do is put that into our charter revenue program, where we put it right back into our network for our other clients, which then gives the aircraft owner positive charter revenue, right, to reduce their cost of ownership. So that was a solution that we put in place to kind of close the loop and create this platform where wherever somebody is in that kind of journey or life cycle of aviation use, there's room to play in the sandbox for them.
Got it. Thank you, Anthony, for the context. So tonight we're going to be speaking a little bit of the correlation between air travel, private aviation, and ground transportation. But before we get started, Anthony, tell us a little bit about how you guys started from day one. How did you start your journey in the private aviation sector?
So that was a long time ago. I've been in aviation for 23 years, and got involved in the early 2000s for a startup company, and my model of like asset light solutions was very new in the early 2000s. And back then you were either buying a fraction of an airplane, or you were buying a whole aircraft, or working direct with a local operator, which was really inefficient because there was no one-way pricing model. So we had tremendous growth. We were, 21, 22. I think the oldest person at the company at that time was 27. Had significant growth pretty rapidly. Few years into the business, investors came in and infused the organization with some growth capital, which was fun for the first 6 months. And when it was okay, we'll take it from here, kids. Great job. Things changed very quickly, but great experience nonetheless. Learned a ton. Had a great board that was full of knowledge and mentorship and guidance, and that showed us so much more of a broader scope of scaling a business, profitability of a business, and different aspects aside from just sales and marketing. And in 2008, my business partner and I sat out our non-compete, launched the Magellan Jets, and so we're in our 16th year in business today. We're a top 10 provider in the space, and to date, currently, we did this without investors, so bootstrapped the first couple of years, used our own cash, and remain today a debt-free organization. So that's where we're at today.
That's awesome. Thank you. Appreciate the context. So what was the most challenging part when you first got started as a business, and what are the challenges now, as well as the challenges within the industry, not just for the business?
Sure. So getting started in the business, we deliver services to a very discerning, very high-touch clientele. And when you think about, a lot of folks talk about the 1%, we deliver services to the 1% of the 1%. And that is a very difficult client to reach, to get their attention. Then more importantly, to gain their trust around safety, service, reliability. So I'd say, in the early days, that was one of the biggest challenges, was the lack of brand recognition. We were fortunate. We had been in the business for 7 or 8 years, built a great organization, made a name for ourselves. But it was still, to go after the large corporate accounts, Fortune 500, Fortune 1000, that was a huge barrier to entry, was just the, never heard of you guys, you don't own planes, so on and so forth. And, obviously when you think about the future of transportation, there's been such an evolution over the last 15 years of how we purchase, whether it's models like your Freedom Boat Club, or, doing fractional charter leasing where you have 30 or 45 days as opposed to buying the entire asset. You look at ground transportation. The largest ground transportation company in the world owns 0 cars. The largest restaurant in the world, 0 restaurants. Same with the hotel industry. So technology has really provided a gateway to, you have your demand aggregators who are matching that demand up with the supply chain. And that's very consistent with what our business model is. Challenges today, I would say, probably still on the technology side, right? Like, how do we do that faster? How do we do that more efficiently? That's something that we're extremely excited about. We acquired an aviation technology company back in 2023 to help really solve that challenge.
Is it, Anthony, if I made the challenge of solving inventory and just connecting it with the actual consumer and charging for that transaction? Like, what's the main challenge from your perspective?
So the aggregating the demand has not been a challenge. That's what we do well, right? Is consumer brand, retention, and that sort of thing. How do we do it quicker, faster? One of the differences between, if you think of like Uber, ground transportation, right? I can pick up my phone, and in a half a second, I'll know what the price of my ride is, how long it's going to take. If I have to wait more than 5 minutes these days, now I'm a little frustrated, right? Like, technology has provided such a fast connection to that availability. And aviation is a little bit different, where you have more moving parts in terms of scheduling, maintenance of airplanes. You have pilots aren't sitting in an airplane waiting for somebody to tap a button, right? So there's that lag time of, when somebody says go to when the pilots get out there, do pre-flight, do everything that they need to do, fuel up the aircraft, reposition, etc. So there's a little bit more complexity there. The bigger challenge with the complexity is actually around crew scheduling, maintenance, mechanicals, things like that. So, what we've been working on is how do we integrate those schedules, the location of the aircraft, much quicker, more efficient with the demand that we've created, and how do you integrate those? So that's probably the one that I'd say that the biggest challenge, but definitely the largest opportunity is solving that, for our business.
In action with the flexibility and the agility to cover all these logistics at a rapid pace in an easy, friendly environment.
Yeah, speed, right? Externally and internally.
Got it. And as far as, let's transition a little bit into the future of transportation and the correlation between private jets and ground transportation. We talk in this podcast a lot about autonomous vehicles, flying vehicles. So if we had the crystal ball 10 years from now and we start seeing these flying vehicles really enter into the market, what will you say is the challenge? Will the private aviation will still exist? What is your sort of hallucination here on the future?
Sure. So as it relates to ground transportation, first of all, there's a very natural, vertically aligned from a service perspective, from the customer's perspective, between private aviation and ground transportation. And, one of the things that we provide is that pillow to pillow movement with our clients, right? So, at Magellan, we handle everything from that ground transportation, getting them to the aircraft and making sure that they're to their final destination safely. We've done different things with, partners like Denison Yachts, which is our yacht partner in the space, to do that same thing as it relates to a vacation, right? Ground transportation, get on the airplane, helicopter to the yacht, make sure they're safe and sound, all in one place. So that's, that correlation exists today as it relates to like the autonomous, whether it's eVTOL aircraft, autonomous cars, autonomous aircraft. I guess the kind of crystal ball is not so much on one, it's not if, it's when. And I'd say the big question is really not around, do we as a civilization have the means to do it, the brain power to do it? It's already done, right? I was in Scottsdale last year and I was in an autonomous Uber. There was no, I went from Phoenix to Scottsdale without a driver. So that's, in different parts of the country, the autonomous vehicles, autonomous, Waymo is, probably the leader in that. That's already happening. On the aircraft side, same thing, right? We've been flying autonomous aircraft, whether you think about drones. I mean, the military's been using drones for years. So the technology's there. As it relates to passenger autonomous aviation, one of the biggest challenges is the same thing that we're seeing on the electric cars, right? Is not so much more that it's not that the technology is not there. It's that the infrastructure is the thing that is lagging, right? The infrastructure, whether it's around landing stations, air control, charging stations, and then the big one is going to be consumer acceptance, us as consumers being comfortable with walking up to an aircraft, boarding it, and having no one inside of it, right? Like that's kind of scary to think about.
Totally. So, Anthony, before we transition into, because you brought a great point about electrical planes. We see it, we talk a lot about electrical vehicles here, and I would love to get your input into the electrical planes. But before we transition there, with the eVTOL vehicles, do you foresee consumers to still get on a private jet, or like, what do you foresee that when you guys talk in the National Business Association, what is it called, MBTA?
NBAA, yeah, National Business Aviation Association.
Correct. Like, what is the predicament here with eVTOLs and sort of the impact on your industry?
Yes. So the eVTOLs are a big part of private aviation. They're a big part of aviation in general. There's a lot of companies investing in the research and development. There's, again, same thing. There's eVTOLs that have been doing testing for years. And it's something that it works. The challenge is going to be around infrastructure, airspace. For private aviation, it will be more of an enhancement as opposed to a disruptor of our business model. It'll be an enhancement because when somebody wants to go from, Teterboro Airport to get to LA, they're not going to do that in an eVTOL, but they're going to get picked up on, 31st Street in an eVTOL and be at Teterboro Airport in 6 minutes as opposed to being there in, 30 trying to get through the Lincoln Tunnel. So it's very similar to, we do a lot of helicopter transfers for that same reason, like from the aircraft to their final destination, ground transportation, vehicles from our, to get them to that aircraft. So eVTOLs serve a place where it'll allow us to be able to help folks get to that final destination. But you're not going to be bringing a ton of luggage. They're very limited on how far they can go. So that's more of a it's kind of like it's more of an urban mover as opposed to like a 2.5. You're not going to do a 2.5 hour trip on an eVTOL. It's probably anything probably 20 minutes and less.
Totally. That is an excellent point. And in regards to electrical planes, you mentioned the infrastructure. So I know in our industry, we're having a hard time just moving forward with it because there's just the infrastructure is just not there yet. And the cost of entry is just so high that it just doesn't justify the ROI just yet. But let alone the ROI, primarily is the infrastructure that is really necessary for transportation companies, whether it's trucking or ground transportation overall, passengers, that is so hard to manipulate and to work with it. How is your business with the electrical planes and the overall infrastructure? Is it there? Is it here yet? Is it here, or we're still behind the ball? Like, what is your sort of perspective on it?
Yeah, it's really I'd say the same but worse than what you're seeing with electric vehicles, where the technology is here, the infrastructure is not. When you think about eVTOLs flying around your city, you need to think about, well, it's low on battery. Where's it going to land? Right? It needs to land on buildings. Buildings need the charging stations on top. Right now, the buildings aren't built to be able to provide that power at the top of the buildings, right outside of cities, right? So there's a lot of those things to think about, just like, the reason why some folks won't, buy an electric vehicle today is the challenge of the anxiety of running around trying to look for a charging station. And it's certainly a bigger issue when you're talking about something that's flying around with people in the air. So until that's solved, I think it's going to be the same as what we're seeing in places like Phoenix and Scottsdale, where there's different areas of the country that will be able to test, start using based on whether like Arizona is great because it's very spread out. There's not a lot of congestion in the cities, right? Like when I was in the Waymo, the vehicle will not break any road laws. So, like for instance, it won't double park to let you out of the vehicle. Where we all know you're in Uber, hey, just pull over right here, and they'll stop in the middle of the street and you can hop out. So when I was in the Waymo autonomous Uber, we had to like circle around the block until it found an open space where it could pull in, not be illegally double parked in the road. So when you think about something like that in Boston, I mean, go to Newbury Street and try to find a legal space to pull over and get out safely. It's so that there's challenges just like that when you think about the eVTOL, really mobilizing that as well.
Totally. And just to transition to growth, when you mentioned growth, for all the listeners, most of the listeners are private owners and transit authorities, Fortune 1000 companies. But if you could just sort of reiterate a little bit of your experience on growth, what if you were to reflect back, what made you successful, right? Like what made you take those big jumps over the years?
Yeah. So first and foremost, our team members, right? Like our assets are people. And I'd certainly much rather have a good product with outstanding people than an outstanding product with good people or average people for that. So just really investing in our colleagues, whether, that's finding the right people to lead the charge. Our senior leadership team, our executive leadership team, really investing in training. Very easy to kind of mull over or, not invest in training. It's something that is very difficult to implement depending upon the size of your organization. And, right people, right seats, but more importantly, having, we call it hire slow and fire fast, right? Like ensuring that the folks that are coming into the organization believe what we believe, have the same, align with our core values. Our passion here, we say, is helping people live their best lives. Every decision that you make, right? And you do that internally with the expectation that that's going to happen externally. And our core values are lead with safety, create amazing, and care deeply. Very simply, right? And if our team members truly, truly believe and embody that, then certainly they'll take care of our clients. So it always starts, for me, it always starts with the people. And then, where we believe, our growth happens, one is just having that roadmap, right? We call it our North Star, which is our 36, 48-month plan. And really just, I'd say, from the roadmap perspective, just being clear on like what our success looks like and where where do we play, where can we win, and who are we, and more importantly, who are we not, right? Like we're not commoditizing private aviation. We don't do ride sharing service. Some of the things that some of the folks in our industry do, and that model works for them. It doesn't work for us. For us, we don't want to be all things to all people. We're very defined in the clients that we serve, and we believe we can win on safety, service, and our solutions. We don't own 100 planes and worry about optimizing a schedule that might, conflict with the experience that the client has, right? So when you think about like an airline like Delta, right? They'll move flights and, hey, you got this delay and this and that. And it's very difficult, and that's their business, right? They're in the airplane business, and we're in the people business. So it allows us to really focus on the service and the experience of our clients.
That's awesome. That is very well said. And we normally in this podcast we ask, what is the best 2 books that you recommend, or that has the most profound nuggets for you? Which ones do you normally recommend?
That's a tough one. It's tough because I probably read 20, 30 books a year, if not more. Well, I'll give you the one I'm reading right now, which is Unreasonable Hospitality, um, which is a great book, highly recommend. Which, we're all in hospitality. No matter what your organization is, no matter if you're serving a client, it's, we're in hospitality. And if we can get a shift in behavior, a shift in um, passion around hospitality, I think that's very important. And then what else would I put on that list? There's so many. Extreme Ownership, I love. Dichotomy of Leadership,
Street.
Extreme Ownership. Yeah, Jocko Willink. Love that. I just read Jack Welch's Winning, which was a great book. The Ultimate Sales Machine. I mean, the Referral Engine. There's just, I could go on for days. I love The Purple Cow, Seth Godin, which is a great book. Just thinking about our Blue Ocean Sky. Is it Blue Ocean Sky? Blue Ocean Thinking, or
Yep.
yeah. So yeah, I could go.
Blue Ocean, Red Ocean. Yep. Something like
Yeah. That was a great one. So always reading something constantly.
that. Yeah. And thank you. It seemed a common denominator that the most successful folks that I had in the show are the ones that are just constantly reading, working on themselves, and becoming the best version of themselves.
That's it. Our guy Tony Robbins, what's he say? If you're not growing, you're dying. And when you're 50 years old and it's like, oh, hey, I went to this, I have a business degree at this college, 30 years ago. Well, the lessons learned 30 years ago are, at a macro level and not relevant today, with all the different shifts. So, I think as leaders, I'd say it's our responsibility to continue to grow, continue to stay current on all the trends, technology, economics, etc., and pass that throughout the organization.
Yeah, and I would say that it's an addiction. It's a successful addiction, and it could be contagious, especially if you could pass it to your other leaders, right?
Absolutely.
And then the last question, Anthony, is what is the best business advice you ever gotten? Whether it was from a mentor, from someone in your board.
So much, right? And I've had so many great mentors, but I would say the one that I would pass along, in starting a business, or being at, having a $500 million business. It really comes down to, who you surround yourself with, and ensuring that, I have the absolute best people around me, the smartest people around me. And I always want to make sure that, it's important that as a leader, if you're the smartest person in the room, then you're probably not doing a great job at getting that talent around you. And we were talking earlier, it's, in meetings, I do, certainly a lot. I'm asking more questions than I am delivering answers, and just by staying curious and asking great questions, it helps me understand different perspectives. So on the decisions that I do need to make, I have a full scope and a wide lens on the information. But it also, I believe, fosters, smart people and just ideas, right? And the more ideas that we can get out on the table, there's strength in numbers, and why hire great people if you're not going to use them?
Yeah, that is very well said. Anthony, again, thank you for being generous with your time. Thanks for dropping all the nuggets of experience in your sector and business overall. It's always a pleasure spending time with you. we could connect on, if for the listeners, they want to connect with you, whether it's for a private jet, the best way is to connect with you on LinkedIn or through email, which we're going to put it on the episode notes. So again, thank you, Anthony. Have a great day.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for tuning in today. We hope you enjoyed the episode and got some valuable insights. If you're curious to learn more, head over to the resource website at dpvtransportation.com, where we got a ton of useful resources and tools for you to stay ahead of the game. And before we wrap it up, I want to invite you to book a free guest admission consultation or a consultation about your ground transportation program with us. Just register on our website is a fantastic way to see how your fleet is doing or how your overall program could be improved. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll catch you next time on the Future of Ground Transportation. Have a great day.
Thanks for tuning in to the Future of Ground Transportation. We appreciate you coming along for the ride. If you found value in this episode and want to hear more, please make sure to subscribe to the show.